Hey everyone, and welcome back to another EPL SuperCoach video here from Aman Talk SuperCoach, looking at game week 3. What am I looking at doing for my team, potential trade plans, and all of that other good stuff. Very quickly, let me show you guys how I went in week 2. I can tell you now, it wasn't good. 53 points. It was an absolute nightmare. None of my players did very well. I had Bruno Fernandes miss a penalty. Erling Haaland was my captain. He blanked. I just didn't get really any good points in my defense either. You can see the team here. David Raya was good with 11, but I benched Mickey van de Ven, who got a clean sheet against City, so didn't get his points. I had a panic trade at 4:58 a.m. When Chelsea played West Ham and Cole Palmer was ruled out in the warm-up. And I thought, okay, well, if he's missing game week 3, then maybe there's an international break after that. Fixtures for Chelsea longer term up until about game week 8 weren't fantastic. They were okay. I just thought maybe here's an opportunity to just go early and sell him. But I panicked. I was very sleepy and wondering who to get. And I just went with Jared Bowen because he was the guy who was playing in that game. And I think I regret that trade because West Ham looked awful. Look, he will eventually probably come good, but he wasn't a good trade in. This is part of the whole learning process around EPL SuperCoach and whatnot, because he has a 25 break even. So he's probably going to go down in price, which doesn't feel great. So what I wanted to do in this video, hopefully not be too long. I've kind of stressed it in my first proper EPL SuperCoach video, was that with 44 trades that we have, 44 trades, I've used one already. It's going to be very, very difficult to manage your player base and your trades, just given it's a 38 game week season. So your trades are precious, which is why I'm kind of annoyed at the Cole Palmer one. This is the first week though before we get price changes. So it is a crucial trading week if you are looking at changing things up with your squad. In terms of my team and who I'm happy with, Raya is completely fine. He's actually been one of my best picks, had 2 clean sheets in the first 2 weeks. The fixtures for the next kind of 3 or 4 weeks aren't the best. They've got Liverpool this week. I'm pretty sure they've got Nottingham Forest after that. They've got City, and then they've got maybe Chelsea, or they've got one other tougher fixture. So I'm not too confident on future clean sheet prospects, although Arsenal are definitely the best defense in the EPL. Yeah, they've got Newcastle in 6, but after from game week 7, West Ham, Fulham, Palace, Brentford, Sunderland, it's a good run for Arsenal. So Raya will stay there for me. He's got a break even of -6 as well, so he's going to go up in price. So that looks pretty good. Mickey van de Ven, Spurs do have very good long-term fixtures. So I'm actually got here from Fantasy Football Scout. So this is obviously more Fantasy Premier League based, but it's a great little fixture ticker that you can look at. So this is looking at difficulty of fixtures from game week 3 to game week 7. So we're looking at the kind of next 5 weeks. Spurs are second, Bournemouth, West Ham, Brighton, Wolves, and Leeds. And their fixture run actually looks even better if you extend the ticker even further. So for example, if I push it to maybe say game week 12, then what we're looking at, sorry, that doesn't quite work. Let me try to fix that up. Oh, it doesn't matter. Actually, we can do that here. Let's just push it up to game week 10. Spurs are still second in the ticker. It's only really at maybe game week 8 they've got Villa, but then they've got Everton, then Chelsea. Long term, it's a good run for Spurs, and they already look defensively better under Thomas Frank than they do Ange. So I'm happy with Van de Ven as a pick. He's got a -6 break even as well, so should be going up in price. Bournemouth, I expect them to score this week, but just long term, looking at these fixtures, I'm happy with someone like Mickey van de Ven. Dorgu, Manchester United lost to Grimsby on penalties, which is ridiculous. He's got Burnley at home this week, so he's not going for me in terms of a trade. He's cheap as well. He's 4.4 million, so I'll probably just stick with him. Diouf from West Ham, their fixtures don't look very, very good up until maybe game week 8. So they've got Nottingham Forest, Tottenham, Crystal Palace, Everton, Arsenal, Brentford, Leeds, Newcastle. It's a bit of a mixed bag of fixtures, and he's pretty attacking. So I don't think I'll be making a trade on him. He's also cheap as well, so I don't really see a lot of value trading him out. He did pick up an assist last week, didn't get a clean sheet, but looked very attacking in the first week. One issue in defense, though, I think is De Kuyper from Brighton. Scored -1 on the weekend. Brighton didn't look the best defensively, and their fixtures long-term don't look that good either. If you look at the long-term ticker, their fixtures only get good because maybe of game week 10 when they've got Leeds. Otherwise, it's City, Bournemouth, Spurs, and Chelsea. I expect all 4 of those teams to score against Brighton in the next 4 weeks. Wolves is good, but it's an away game. Then it's Newcastle, Manchester United, Leeds. I just don't see many clean sheets in there at all. So I think De Kuyper is probably someone who I'll be looking at moving on this week potentially. He's got a break even of 11, so it's not huge, but probably is likely to be going down in price this week. And Esteve from Burnley, he's someone to sit on my bench, 3.9 million. I think I'll just keep him for the time being. Midfield, so Tajani Reinders, I'm okay with. He was a cheap get at 6.5 million. Did well game week 1, not so well in game week 2, but look, he plays for a very attacking Manchester City team. If we see any rotation down the line where his minutes get reduced, then I might look to move him on. But up until then, I'm not looking at, I think, moving on Reinders. And that's the same with Bruno. Even though Bruno has got a big break even this week of 25, he's got Burnley this week. And as you saw, he scored pretty well in the first week without any major attacking. He didn't get any attacking stats. But he still scored 8. The good thing with Bruno in EPL SuperCoach is that he picks up a lot of these other additional things around tackles, recoveries, all those kind of things. So if I have a look at week 1, he had 3 key passes. I want to say, accurate crosses, successful dribbles, tackles, aerials 1. He kind of racked up all of these kind of other stats against Arsenal. So even in tougher fixtures, I think Bruno's fine. He's on penalties. He missed his penalty last week, but against Grimsby, scored both of his penalties in the shootout. Cunha and Mbeumo both missed penalties. So I think Bruno will stay on penalties. I'm probably just going to stick with him. I think he's a long-term pick in my team. Jared Bowen, who's my panic transfer in, I'm not sure what I'll do with him. I don't want to force too many trades, just given that trades are crucial in this game. But he does have a big break even of 25. And I'm just not sure how confident I am with West Ham long-term. So he's one who I'm kind of umming and ahhing about. And then Rodri and Dewsbury Hall, both cheap picks, so I think they'll stay there. Ollie Watkins, break even of 15. He hasn't yet scored a goal. Villa haven't looked very good in attack, but they've got good long-term fixtures. If you just kind of cut back the fixture ticker up until game week 8, they're sitting right at the top. Palace, Everton, Sunderland, Fulham, Burnley, Spurs. Really, game week 5, 6, and 7 is when I really, really want Aston Villa attackers. But even game week 4 against Everton were lucky to keep that clean sheet last week against Brighton. So I think Ollie Watkins will stay for me, despite the break even being a little bit higher. I think he was someone I looked at as a pretty long-term pick up until about game week 7 or 8. And Erling Haaland, look, he only has a break even of 9. Probably will be my captain this week against Brighton. And I've got Bruno Weiss against Burnley, and then Erling Haaland captain against Brighton. Don't really fear my Liverpool attackers like Salah. He has Arsenal this week. Next week, though, could be a bit scary when he has Burnley. But that leads me on to Florian Wirtz. He hasn't looked that good in the first 2 weeks. Hasn't really looked that threatening for Liverpool. Granted, Bournemouth, they're a very intense press team. And then Newcastle, exactly the same as well. I think Arsenal aren't going to be as much of a pressing team. They kind of generally will be happier to be a bit more of a low block. So maybe this kind of a game could work better for Wirtz. It's a bit less physical. And then game week 4 and 5, he's got Burnley and Everton. So despite his break evens are a little bit higher. It's at 16, but it's not massively high. So I'm just wondering, is he going to be a trade out? And the thing is, a lot of the forwards who I might want, who do have good fixtures, if I look at the fixtures, this week, Nottingham Forest, 3 of the next 4 are West Ham, Burnley, and Sunderland. So they look really good. But Chris Wood is more expensive than Florian Wirtz. Do I want to get Wood in for Wirtz? I'm not 100% sure, especially when Wirtz has good fixture next week against Burnley and then Everton in 5. So that's one thing that I'm deliberating. Just looking across at the team, I think De Kuyper is probably someone who, as I spoke about before, I do feel happy to sell. And I think, honestly, Bowen could be someone I also look to move on. If I look at midfielders just in particular, guys who might be interesting, Moises Caicedo looks like someone who I think is a good EPL SuperCoach pick. Now, he did score a goal last week against West Ham that has inflated his score, but he's got a -7 break even, and he actually scored 11 points in the first week, and he did not get any goals or assists. Similar to Bruno, he's someone who will rack up these kind of other stats. So he did get 2 points for the clean sheet against Crystal Palace in the first game. But then he also had a successful dribble. He had 3 tackles. He had 2 block shots and 2 interceptions, and as well as 2 points for the appearances. Good thing with Caicedo is that he's generally pretty nailed on for minutes for Chelsea, despite them rotating. And the thing with Chelsea, if you look at their fixtures long term, Fulham, Brentford, United, Brighton, Liverpool, Forest, it's kind of a mixed bag, but he's not someone who you pick, I think, for goals and assists. but he's good on these kind of underlying recoveries. And I think this is something that, a bit of a learning curve just with EPL SuperCoach. And similar to what FPL has introduced with defensive contributions, these are the key stats. It's not just about goals and assists. If you're able to rack up these other numbers, you can just get picks who are very nice, stable, solid, good for minutes. And so one thing I've just thought of now is, Jared Bowen is good attacking player, but he does have a big negative break even. If I can free up money, Caicedo is one who stood out just because he has scored some points, but just given the fact that he scored 11, I'm just going to double check. Yeah, he scored 11 in the first game and then obviously scored 16. You know what? Let's quickly do this on the fly as well. Have a look and see what he would have scored without the goal last week. So he would have scored 6 points. So 6 points isn't great, but again, that wasn't the kind of game where he needed to do that kind of dirty work in the middle of the field because West Ham had no threat at all. So if 6 points is his floor, like Jared Bowen scored that, I'm pretty sure Jared Bowen scored that for me last week. Yeah, he scored 5 points as well. But if I'm saying, well, if the floor of Caicedo is 5, Bowen's floor is 5, but I can pretty much get Caicedo for half the price, maybe that's a good way of freeing up a lot of money and bolster kind of the rest of my squad and have some money sitting in the bank, because that was a bit of a panic trade to get to Bowen. I'm not sure if I'm that keen on Bowen, especially with this big positive break even of 25. Other midfielders who look good, Jack Grealish was someone who, got a couple of assists. Everton's long-term fixtures, though, aren't fantastic. They've got Wolves this week, which is decent, then Villa. To be fair, Liverpool, West Ham, Crystal Palace, Man City, it's a bit of an up and down set of fixtures. So Grealish is someone who is appealing as well. Now, I think he scored in the first game what did he score in the first game? Only the 2 points as well. I think I'm just going to try to prioritize guys who can get these kind of good underlying numbers through the recoveries, the crosses, the tackles, block shots, things like that. That's why someone like a Rodri is good. Caicedo, who we just highlighted, is good. And I'm thinking of these midfielders in the cheaper price brackets. Of course, with no Cole Palmer being injured, Jared Bowen and Bruno Fernandes. If you look at some of these other higher priced midfielders, you're not really considering Amad Diallo. Eze, with a few more minutes risks at Arsenal, you're probably not going to be going with him. Maddison's injured. Iwobi, probably not. Morgan Gibbs-White, fixtures are decent, but also they've got Europe and probably not the most stable pick. And then you're getting to your Enzo Fernandez, Declan Rice, but they're all like $9+ million. So I think just thinking about it and looking through this list of players, I think I'm happy to go a little bit cheaper potentially in that midfield spot and instead try to stack the money in the forwards, because I think the forwards is where the interest really is. So let's say hypothetically I did Bowen out, and let's say I got in a Moises Caicedo for all those reasons that we just discussed. That gives me $6.74 million. Now, that doesn't mean I'm just going to go and spend a massive amount of money in my defense, because I don't think defense is where you want to be really spending the money. I think it's in the forwards. And if you have a look at here, I don't expect Timber to ever get a score that big ever again. And he's not... Arsenal's back four is a bit hard to predict on a week-to-week basis. I mean, apart from Gabriel and Saliba, you've got Ben White, Timber, Calafiori. They can all rotate minutes, and you also do have Lewis Skelly there as well. So I'm not that keen on Calafiori or Timber. I know they're actually two of the most traded in players this week, but I think in defense you generally want to stick with your safe bets of, Spurs are looking pretty good, but I've already got Mickey van de Ven. I've got an Arsenal defender already in David Raya. So I think I'm not that worried about having to invest in a defender who costs a lot of money. So let's just keep that for the time being. If, say, for example, I could just keep De Kuyper and not have to prioritize making a trade in defense, which instead could mean if I wanted to maybe upgrade a Florian Wirtz, maybe he's the player who I'll look to move on. And so if I am looking at forwards, that's where things probably do get a little bit more interesting, because you've got the likes of Cody Gakpo, who's been pretty good, although I don't think I'd go Wirtz to Gakpo, just given that they play for the same team. Semenyo has been really good. He's safe for minutes. Richarlison has been good, but a little bit concerned with minutes for him, just if Dom Solanke eventually takes that starting role back. So I'm not sure how keen I am on Richarlison. Ekitike, you've got Isak as a bit of concern. So basically, what I'm saying is that it's a bit hard to predict. What I could potentially do is, if I wanted to be a little bit cheeky, is instead of selling Wirtz, I can just keep Wirtz and have that 6.7 million in the bank, so that next week I can bring in maybe a Mo Salah for like a Erling Haaland. I could do something like that, and then I can captain Mo Salah when he has Burnley and Everton in game week 4 and game week 5. So that's potentially an option. Chris Wood with West Ham this week, then Arsenal, then I think it was Burnley and Sunderland. Could be a good pick for the next 4. Longer term, I think Palace have got better fixtures though than Nottingham Forest. It's about, they're pretty similar. So maybe someone like a Mateta could be good for Palace. But I think there's a bit more interest in the forwards. With Saka getting injured, he's not going to be a consideration. Ismail Assar is actually rated as a forward as well in EPL SuperCoach. He's a midfielder in FPL. So not 100% sure. I think Bowen to Caicedo is a trade that I'm eyeing up that looks pretty interesting. And then if I wanted to maybe not necessarily force Wirtz out, I could just do this one trade, have that money sitting in the bank, or I could do De Kuyper out for a defender of my choosing. Defenders that have done well so far, a little bit of a mixed bag, but the ones who are sorted by highest price. Let's just see who we would be considering. Actually, a Daniel Munoz is actually pretty interesting. He is expensive, but Aston Villa away is okay, but then he does have Sunderland at home. Then he's got West Ham, Liverpool, Everton, Bournemouth, and if we extend the fixture ticker just to be a little bit longer, let's say to game week 10 and 11, then Crystal Palace do have other good fixtures. Arsenal, Brentford, Brighton. I think the good thing with Munoz is that he's just very, very attacking. So he is the most expensive defender in the game. Do I want to put my money there? I'm not totally sold on that break even of 8. He probably isn't a rush to have to bring in this week either. But look, he scored 10 points in game week 1 as well, getting a clean sheet against Chelsea. Then he did get an assist for 8 points last week against, who did Crystal Palace play last week? Nottingham Forest. So maybe a Tarkowski is good because he's generally good for those underlying things like the tackles and whatnot. Porro could be an option if I wanted to double up on the Spurs defense. He's generally quite attacking as well. Chalobah probably not an option for me just with Chelsea's fixtures that we kind of ran through earlier. Basically what I'm saying is that I have no idea what I'm going to be doing with maybe that second trade. I maybe don't have to force a second trade. You let me know in the comments, guys, as well what you're thinking. Do you prioritize maybe the forward? Maybe do you prioritize the defender? Let's have a quick look actually at the trade trends for this week. So top 10 trade-ins: Calafiori, Grealish, Richarlison, Cullen from Burnley, Caicedo's number 5, Timber, Ekitike, Pedro, Gakpo, and Vicario. So I'm not going to get a goalkeeper, I think, just given the way that my setup with Raya. Gakpo, unlikely for me, just given that I already do have Florian Wirtz. Pedro could be an option, but I think if Palmer was out long term, then I'd be much more interested in Pedro, given that more likely he would have penalties. But I think with the fixtures that Chelsea do have for the next few weeks of Fulham are a good defense. Brentford away is decent, but Brentford look pretty good against Villa. Then it's United. Brighton in 6 is a bit scary, but then it's Liverpool. Forest are a decent defense as well. I think Pedro, I feel like I don't have to bring in. Of course, he had a massive game just gone, so he's got a negative break even, so he could go up in price. So if I didn't want to maybe overthink it, Pedro could be the forward pick that I go for. I don't think I'll get Timber or Cullen or Richarlison. Grealish maybe at 3.9 million, but I think I've already got Dewsbury Hall. I don't feel the need to have to go get him. And then Calafiori as well. So I think out of that entire list, Caicedo and Pedro, 2 guys from Chelsea, funnily enough, are the guys that maybe I'm considering. In terms of trade outs, Cole Palmer makes sense given he's injured. Frimpong is out until the international break. Florian Wirtz being the 3rd most traded out player, I get it, given that it's Arsenal this week, but maybe his game isn't conducive for points in EPL SuperCoach. So maybe I do need to rethink it and maybe just trade him out. Maybe I could sit on him this week. Maybe I upgrade him to Salah next week if I have all of that money in the bank. De Kuyper looks like someone I will be happy to trade out as well this week, given the fixtures that Brighton have. Ollie Watkins, I'm going to hold the faith just with Villa's fixtures. Same with Bruno. He's got Burnley this week. I definitely wouldn't be selling Bruno despite the fact that he and Manchester United have not looked very good in the last couple of weeks. And then Bukayo Saka is injured as well, so that makes sense. So I think the trade outs make sense. Trade ins is a little bit tough to kind of call out. That's why the way that FPL Fantasy Premier League generally is working, it's very much reliant on fixtures. And that's kind of where I want to be trying to prioritize as well, is looking at players who do have good fixtures long term. And I keep mentioning long term just because we don't have that many trades when it comes to EPL SuperCoach. With 6 boosts, I could even consider a boost this week if I wanted. And then that would leave me with 5 boosts, and maybe I'd save some of those boosts for like big fixture swings, or if I wanted to change it for any blank game weeks or double game weeks down the line. So given I'm uncertain, I'm not sure if I'm going to rip a boost this early in the season when I don't fully know who I'll be trading in or out. But I think, let's say that Bowen to Caicedo happens. I do like Munoz. Munoz has actually always been someone who's been good for me when it comes to fantasy Premier League. So I'm not adverse to getting him. Lacroix, I don't know how you pronounce that, from Palace. So he's a bit of a darling in fantasy Premier League because of defensive contributions. So he scored 8 points on the weekend. I just want to see how he got those points, because he is like £2 million cheaper than Munoz, but he only scored 5 points less on the weekend. And that was in a game where he didn't get a clean sheet. But he basically had all of these other underlying numbers. And then in the game, he got a clean sheet against Chelsea, 17 points. So Lacroix could actually be a good little hedge against Munoz, getting someone from Palace. I think Palace are generally just a good team, despite losing Eze. He could actually be someone I look at now very seriously. Maybe a De Kuyper to Lacroix. And I don't mind having a slightly more expensive defender, just to kind of have that price point. And then maybe I leave the trade as is. If I wanted to upgrade Wirtz to maybe like an £11 million forward, I can get someone like a Chris Wood, or I can just sit him there and have that money sitting in the bank. So I think, thinking about it now, this would actually probably most likely be my set of trades this week. If I just hypothetically did those trades, then in terms of how I would set up my team this week formation-wise, I don't know if I'd bench Wirtz, because I feel like if I'm going to bench Wirtz, I may as well just sell him. In terms of defenders, Van de Ven and Dorgu are fine. I'll probably sub out Diouf for Lacroix, just to play someone who's a bit more solid defensively. I can probably sit those two defenders. Question is, I guess, do I want to play a Rodri? Although Dewsbury Hall has Wolves away this week, so I think he's actually got a decent fixture. Chelsea have got Fulham, which I think is fine. So it's just probably a question for me of, do I want to play Reinders or Rodri? So that's probably something for me to decide. But I think as it currently stands, this is probably most likely what I'll end up doing for my team. 2 trades. If I want to do a boost, maybe it's Wirtz out. But I think given that I've got a decent kind of sub-in of Rodri, maybe I don't have to force that trade in this week. But guys, that's probably the video. Let me know what you're thinking. Hopefully you found that useful as well for your own team. EPL SuperCoach, it's a bit of a learning curve for all of us. But hopefully you like this style of video, not as long as the kind of NRL SuperCoach ones. If you like what you see, please do give the video a thumbs up. Please consider subscribing to the channel as well if you enjoyed it. And we'll see you all in the next one.